Hey, y'all, welcome to Geek Freaks. I am Frank, and today I'm joined by Ash.
Hi.
There we go. And we have Elee. How you doing, Elee?
Hi, I'm good.
Here we have two professional cosplayers. You go to a convention, you see these amazing cosplays, and you're like, how do they do it? We're about to learn right now from both Ash and Elee. What got you guys into this? Let's get right into it. I want to know, what was your first introduction into cosplay?
I think for me, my first one was Springfest in New York, actually. That's 2013. And a friend of mine was telling me, hey, like, we should go check it out. Because I was in college in 2012 and 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have a lot of crafting things. So my shoddy closet cosplay was going as a Pokeball.
I love that. You've always been kind of king of the like meme cosplay. That's like your specialty.
And that was my first one. It was like white shirt. Oh no, white pants, red shirt, and then I made a cardboard thing as the belt button thing. So that was my first cosplay.
So I actually have kind of a wild like how I got into cosplay story. So I was a freshman in high school. I had like made a bunch of friends and I had convinced a bunch of people to do a Alice in Wonderland stage production with me. So we were all like working for like 6 months. Like we wrote our own screenplay. We were doing costumes, like we were doing all this stuff. And we were doing this like teaser trailer, like a couple scenes of the show on Memorial Weekend, which was the same weekend as one of the local cons. And one of my friends was like, oh my God, like we should go to this con together also, blah, blah, blah. Like it's super fun. So the same weekend that I'm like frantically finishing all of these costumes, like for all of my friends for the stage production, I also managed to pull together a cosplay to go to this convention. And at the time, one of my friends had gotten me into Homestuck. So I was a big Homestuck fan. Yeah. And so I did Aradia Megiddo from Homestuck. She's one of the trolls. So I had the I had the gray skin. I didn't have a wig. I spray painted my real hair black, which looked about as good as you can imagine, which was not good at all. But I had a huge fun time. Yeah, it was great. And we got to like go and we got to just like hang out with like honestly, I'm really grateful to like the Homestuck fandom for being my introduction to cosplay, because that fandom in particular was like super welcoming. Like there was tons of people that I met at that con that I'd never met before that were just like, come hang out with us, come play games with us, like come do all this stuff. So it was a really, really fantastic like introduction to like conventions and the world of cosplay.
That's a good one too. Speaking of a different, unique way of getting into it, going from like theater craft, what are some of the similarities you see between theater craft and cosplay?
Very much the like project management of it. So like when you're doing theater costuming, it's like you have a deadline, you have like the show opens, you have to get all of your stuff done, like, you know, well in advance of that. And you have to like essentially manage this entire project. And cosplayers do that and they don't even realize that they're doing it. Cause like, if you think about it, when you go to a con, you're wearing oftentimes 3 or 4 different costumes in the same weekend for the same event. And so you have to manage this like production of multiple costumes for usually yourself to wear, but sometimes for your friends or other things. And so you have to do a lot of like, okay, you know, when do I need to start on this? How do I balance working on it? Like I need to do all the spray painting because it needs to dry, like all of that kind of like backwards, like project planning. Cosplayers are doing that, you know, sometimes unsuccessfully, right? We all know the con crunch, like last minute trying to finish stuff, but like that's a big part of it that is very similar to like theater production.
Ash, does that sound familiar to you? Does that ring true? Are you like, oh wow, I'm a project manager, didn't know it?
I mean, I feel like I've been a project manager and didn't know it's more in the context of like making video games and like managing to climb myself up into like Sacramento Developer Collective, which is my nonprofit that's dedicated to like game design and development. So I feel like that's been more my experience, having been an accidental role.
Transferable skill though, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. Speaking of those fandoms and that being embraced, have you found a particular fandom that seems to be the most appreciative of your work as a cosplayer?
Yeah, that one's hard. So I don't know if this counts as a fandom, but I do a lot of competitions, and I find that everyone that you meet and hang out with kind of backstage at the competition, like all of your fellow competitors are usually like super appreciative and like that you don't like know about. Like they're just excited to see other cool like craft people making cool stuff. So I would say that is for sure. One place I notice that craftsmanship gets like ignored a lot is if you're doing a really, really popular cosplay and there's like, 50 plus other people dressed as the same character, a lot of times if you made your cosplay and everyone else purchased theirs, the like saturation of all of these cosplayers wearing purchased cosplay means that people like won't notice that you made your own cosplay, or they won't like, they'll just be like, oh, it's another your cosplayer. Oh, it's another Spider-Gwen cosplayer. And they won't realize like, oh, you made your entire suit from scratch. It's not a bodysuit that you bought on Amazon. And so that's where I kind of see like some like underappreciation sometimes.
I feel like a good number of my cosplays are either just like small recognizable ones. Like I've done Ariel or like Chip Skylark or like punny ones. So I feel like I more or less am aiming towards the general witty, like punny humor, which is a lot more generic, and I think I just kind of pull in more, not necessarily a fandom, but more, hey, look, hi, I make stupid jokes in the form of Mikasa Tsukasa cosplay kind of thing.
That one got a good reaction, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like, because like when I did my Mikasa Tsukasa one, I was encouraged to submit into Masquerade, and I didn't even know about the Masquerade. That was my first time like submitting into the Masquerade at Psych Anime, and I won most practical cosplay at the time. So they didn't really have a category. It was 2015, 16.
Yeah, back when that con was a lot smaller.
Yeah,
it's getting big. Yeah. So, when you're doing, you talked a little bit about there, Elee, about a lot of people doing the same cosplay. One of my favorite conventions is BlizzCon down in Anaheim, and there is only so many Blizzard IPs. So you see a lot of Arthas, you see a lot of divas. How do you stand out? Do you try to make the best version of the original costume, or do you try to give it your own flair, maybe be a different version of that character?
Usually the second one. So actually, if I'm doing a cosplay that I think is going to be really popular or have a lot of people dressing up as it, and I'm not doing it for like a competition, a lot of times what I will do is I will be like, how can I do this in a really quick, accessible way? And like I worry less about accuracy and I worry more about like what kind of gives like the vibe of the character. So for example, I did Yor from Spike's Family, and I like thrifted this like velvet dress, and then I like altered it to put all the straps on it. I wore like thigh-high demonias, which were like not accurate to her boots like at all, but I really liked it because I felt like it really had my own version, and I looked different from a lot of the other people who had more accurate but like more identical cosplays. And I'm actually working on Jinx right now for Arcane because season 2 is coming out really soon. Super excited for that.
Same.
And I definitely am going to be putting a lot of my own touches. Like I found a striped fabric, but it's like a wider stripe, so her pants are going to look a little different. I'm going to add some of my own details to it, and I think that's just like more fun when you're doing a character that there's tons and tons of versions of. It is like you really get to have, what details do you want to see, and like how do you want to do something, and then also to like have fun with it. Don't worry as much about like being super accurate or having every little detail. Like how can I do this in a quicker way, and then just get to be the character, because it's fun to be a character that's really popular. Like it's fun to run around and be like, oh my god, there's 50 like Jinx cosplayers. So I enjoy that. I just realized that like I don't want to put a ton of effort into something that won't be recognized. And that's where I notice I can cut corners and still get that recognition and have a fun time and like not spend as much effort on it.
Now, when I'm at these conventions and I'm wearing normal clothes, it becomes a long day. Do you guys ever focus on comfort? Do you try to find little shortcuts to find a way to be, halfway decent, comfortable while you're dressed up as somebody?
I mean, for me, like I managed to choose stuff like Chip Skylark. Oh, cool, sneakers. Or Gamer Girl. I also had sneakers, and like I'm just more or less having to carry a whole like fake grill with me.
Yeah, I would say for me, I usually pick what cosplays I'm doing on different days based on that. So like a lot of times Sunday, I'll do like a chiller, more casual cosplay. Like I've done Crowley, who's like, suit jacket jeans
Yeah.
situation, very casual. Um, and then sometimes too, like, oh, I will also change in the middle of the day. So like I've done like at Satkinme, it was really hot. So
Mhm.
I did Charlie in the morning and I wore like a sundress and I had like my arms and legs out. I had a parasol. So I was like really cool and comfortable. And then I changed like, in the afternoon into Angel Dust, which is a very like full like spandex bodysuit head to toe, like 6-inch heels, much more uncomfortable. But I'm only wearing him for, a few hours instead of all day. And so that becomes a way of like managing the difficulties. Or like sometimes I will just fully take off a part of the cosplay. Like I took my entire shirt off because I was like, I'm hot and I don't want to wear this anymore. So
Yeah.
that definitely happens towards the end of the day too. Like the cosplayer walking around with no wig. Like
I am so excited for Hazbin Hotel season 2 and just hearing like Angel Dust and all these different characters. I'm like, oh, can I wait? I'm so excited.
me too.
Oh.
They tease some stuff in the panel and I cannot wait for that.
So good, so good. Okay, so you're going to these different conventions. How hard is it to haul everything out there? And I always go to conventions and see people having to check weapons, things like that, cosplay weapons and stuff like that. How hard is it to prep for that? And how long are you guys putting into the prep time before you actually get to the convention itself?
I think for me, like I hadn't had to worry about that too much until I had a lot of props with me.
Right.
And for me, the most recent one was actually ALA earlier this year in January, because I had wanted to make a toothbrush for Chip Skylark and my Gamer Grill props. And a lot of that was surprisingly a lot of things to bring. And I was going down to LA with a friend. I was like road tripping it.
Mm-hmm.
And so having 3 cosplayers be in the same car with all of our props,
Giant toothbrush.
it gets pretty like compact a little bit,
Yeah.
So it can be after that I realized, you know what, I need to be mindful of my props more and be like, okay, I need to focus on just one cosplay. If I want to do props, only 1 or 2 depending on how large or small it is. It also kind of makes me think about how I want to, like, one future project I want to do for Chip Skylark is like a more complicated like toothbrush guitar thing that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to make it foldable and even in like a suitcase kind of. So like I'm still trying to figure out the logistics of that, but that is a plan.
Okay, so for me, I travel to a lot of cons that are farther away. I go to some big conventions. I've gone to like KatsuCon, which is on the East Coast before.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously like a cross-country flight. Flying versus driving is like the first deciding factor when I'm planning cosplays for conventions is, do I need to fit my cosplay into a suitcase and bring it on an airplane? Because that immediately means there's a lot of considerations you have to figure out in terms of how can I safely check this? How can I make sure it's not going to get damaged? How can I like get it through airport security? All of that kind of stuff is like very important when you're flying to a convention. I am a diehard Southwest girly. I fly Southwest all the time because they give you 2 free checked bags. So if I'm flying to a con, I know right off the bat I can bring 2 suitcases and I can fit a lot of stuff in those 2 suitcases. And that gives me a lot of options. So I have a serpent cosplay with like a 15-foot stuffed tail that I wear.
Oh,
and that I have brought on an airplane to a convention multiple times. Like it takes up an entire suitcase by itself, just the tail. But I've done it and it's fine. And it's squishy, so it will like squish down into the suitcase, which is totally fine. But I have other cosplays where like I have a shiny Umbreon with a giant sword that's like almost as tall as I am. And that's a car only cosplay. If I'm not driving, I cannot bring it with me. And also another factor that I think a lot of people don't think about until they get into competitions is if you're doing a masquerade competition, especially if you're doing a performance, you'll often need even bigger kind of like stage set pieces sometimes. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I still have to like be juried for this. I'm hoping to compete at ALA and do a performance where I will need a big screen, like a backdrop screen, to like hide myself for my performance. And that is something I'm going to have to bring with me. So I knew that when I was deciding, okay, am I going to fly or I'm going to drive to LA? I have to drive this year to do this performance because I have to bring this huge backdrop. And so that can be a deciding factor for people too, sometimes in those cons that are like, well, I could drive, but it's all day, or I could fly. Sometimes that will be a deciding factor. It's like, what are you trying to do at the con?
Already, there needs to be far more appreciation for cosplayers. Anybody listening right now should be like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. You were talking before about thrifting, a dress and stuff like that. I kind of feel like that would be part of a lot of the fun, is trying to find these materials in random places that might be forgotten material. Has there been any experiences you guys have had where you found like the right material in the weirdest place?
Wait, you said the right material in the weirdest place?
Yeah, like I didn't expect to see Beetlejuice's suit in whatever.
I just thought of something. When like I made Misty Goldine a while back in like Fanime 2013. No, not 13. That doesn't sound right. 2017.
10 plus years ago, somewhere in that realm, almost.
But what I had done is like, I wanted to make her tail. I couldn't figure out how. And then I realized we had a broken umbrella.
Oh, wow.
So I modified the umbrella. It was already broken. So I kind of took it apart a little bit and tried to like play around with it. And then I had done a sample, like, okay, here's how much fabric I need to go over the umbrella. And then I kind of managed to like kind of makeshift a skirt to go on top of that. And it was already broken, right? So I had like half broken down. And then I had to figure out, how am I going to attach this to myself? And so I kind of had like some string, and I had to make some holes in my dress that I had sort of made. I just had to make some holes, but in the end, I managed to like tie it around my waist, and then just ask my photographer friend to just Photoshop it out. That way, in the pictures, it looked like, hey, the tail's just coming out from me.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I'm a big like thrift person. So I would say all of my cosplay shoes are from the thrift store. Thrift store is a great place to get shoes for cosplay, because a lot of times you need something either really specific for your shoes, or you just need like a base that you can then build like a cover onto. And so I will just go to the thrift store. I'll pick up, like a $5 to $10 pair of shoes that is my base. And then I can build on top of it this like really specific custom crazy boot whatever the character is wearing. So that's a big one. I always look for like fabric at the thrift store. I have a huge stash of fabric, so I've definitely found some great fabric at the thrift store too. And then also underrated one for sure is like the hardware store. There's a lot of great supplies at the hardware store, and it's truly that meme where like Ron Swanson walks in and is like, I know more than you, don't fucking talk to me. He like that is a cosplayer in Home Depot, because they walk in and they need like I've bought like flooring foam, which is this really thin, like flexible, like transparent foam, and I've made wings out of it. I've bought pink insulation foam to like carve into props. I've bought PVC pipe, and it's like I'll talk to the player and I'll be like, hey, I need like a hinge, but it swivels, but it's like really small. And then they're like, what are you talking about? And then I just like walk around. This looks like it would work, and then I do that. Like I made like an extra set of arms, and I used a bunch of just like random hinge, bolt, twisty, weird situation from stuff that I found at the hardware store. And that's how I do a lot of my kind of prop constructed stuff.
I never thought I would be at Home Depot. I was there to build D&D stuff, and I'm over there buying insulation foam for D&D walls, and I'm like, who knew?
Yeah, there's a lot of great hardware store materials that people don't think about. Yeah, contact cement, my beloved.
It feels like there's so many skills at play here. I'm sure you guys are starting to sew, and of course, knowing the different kinds of glues and foams and stuff like that. Have any of these skills translated into professional life, or are you starting to see cosplay as a profession that you could kind of expand upon? I was talking to Ash before about like, hey, social media platforms could use, sponsors and stuff like that? Have you seen any avenues in that?
I feel like for me, like my day job, or I'm looking for full-time UX designer positions. And I feel like a lot of what I do as a cosplayer translates and has a lot of parallels to it, because a UX designer does a lot of user research, different types of research methods, and then turning that into like designs, different types of design deliverables, whether it be like creating like personas or journey maps or wireframes, prototypes, all sorts of different things. And so I feel like I could even, like, if I wanted to get into making toys and be a product designer as like in terms of toys, then I could work on my props more. I could create more like custom props for like OC characters even, and then that could technically count as a project if I wanted to go in that route, which is another idea.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot of ways on how I could mix the two together and then really lean into that. So that is one of many branches for me.
Yeah, so I've taken a little bit of a different track with this. So I am a firm believer in the like do not monetize your hobby realm. A lot of people have asked me, like, do you do commissions? Can I commission you? Will you make this? Blah, blah. I'll go to the run fair and I'll have like a giant dandelion staff, and then everyone will be like, oh my God, you should sell those. And I'm like, no, I will not be doing that. And that's very much as a like, I want to protect my own peace and my own energy, and I want cosplay to remain like fun for me. Yeah. However, I do think that there's like a huge great avenue for knowledge sharing, for teaching, for kind of like representing the community, like that sort of like influencer / ambassador kind of area. And that's where I really feel like my value add to the world of cosplay and to the cosplay community really shines. So I've been a local guest at my local Comic-Con convention here in Reno where I live. I'd love to do more guest opportunities. So I need to like reach out to some more cons and see if they need more cosplay guests, but that's an avenue I've been pursuing. I don't know if that really like makes a lot of money. It's kind of really more of a volunteer thing of like you volunteer your time and you like help promote the con and you like judge the competition or whatever. And then you like in exchange get to like attend for free. So it's really more of a trade kind of situation. But I'm a big fan of trade, so I'm really into that. And then I love like teaching and helping people. So like I'm very open about like everything I do and all the builds I do. I want to do more like videos and like long form content. I just don't have the time for that right now. But I'm pretty active on Instagram, and I'm trying to do more like answering questions, shorter tutorials, like stuff like that. Because I do think that like when you've been crafting and sewing and like making cosplay for like over a decade, you pick up a lot of stuff and you have a lot of skills. And like I definitely see a gap between cosplayers who purchase their cosplays and who don't have any of those skills, and cosplayers who are crafters and or people who want to make that transition into crafting, into making their own cosplay, but they don't know how, or they don't know where to start, or they don't have any of these skills. And I want to bridge that gap, and I want to encourage people to like start making stuff and start doing things on their own, because I think it's such a fun and rewarding part of cosplay is the making of it.
Yeah. How does a new cosplayer get into, say they're like, oh, I want to be a cosplayer, I see it and it's awesome. Where do they start? Because is it best to buy cosplay or go right into making your own?
I feel like for me, like I'm still very much in the not making my own that cosplays. I more or less makeshift. So I feel like for beginners, at least from my perspective, like it's okay to want to buy a cosplay. And like I feel like that's like one of the first easiest things to do, because my first handmade cosplay, it was definitely a lot. I didn't really have a lot of resources other than going to Joann's and signing up for the sewing class, learning how to make a circle dress, and my mom and my dad helping me. Apparently my dad is better at sewing than my mom. A fun little fun fact there. But yeah, I feel like my strategy that I would want to tell newcomers would be like, just like, you feel free and go as a normie, or like dress something casually, or buy something, just so like don't put too much pressure on yourself for the first one. Or if you really want to like then Like, it's a matter of finding the right resources. And I feel like for me, after going to the first convention and making a lot of friends, then being able to like just network and learn about how, like saying like, oh my God, I like your cosplay. Like, how did you do that? I would like to learn more. And you kind of learn how other people make their cosplays, because there really is no one right way. There's multiple different ways. Like, for example, Ariel mermaid, like I could still do different versions. I could try to do everything in origami if I wanted to. I could do everything in crochet if I wanted to. Or I could even do like in cardboard boxes, go like Roblox style, Minecraft style, you know? Like there's all sorts of different ways on how you can make a cosplay. You don't have to do it accurate to the exact detail, you know? And that, I feel like that kind of skill level is definitely not beginner anyway.
Yeah. So I think for new cosplayers, you see so much on social media that like looks very perfect and looks very polished. I think people like they want to look like that right away. And I think in some ways, like, I'm glad that purchasing cosplay is more accessible. I'm glad that like you can go online and you can buy an entire cosplay for like $50 and you can get into the hobby and you can start out doing it. I think that's really great. But I do think it creates this kind of divide where when I started cosplaying, you could not go online and purchase a cosplay. That did not exist. And so if you wanted to do it, you had to figure out how to do it yourself, and you had to thrift things, and you had to make a closet cosplay, and you had to sew pieces. And yes, when you first start out, your skills are not going to be very good, and you're going to compare yourself to others, and you're going to be like, wow, my thing looks terrible. But that's part of the learning journey. And I think that I've seen a lot of really encouraging people who are really happy to see new cosplayers who are starting their journey and who have, very basic skills and have a lot of way to go to learn. But I think that like what I would say is like, even if you decide to purchase a cosplay, I would recommend looking up some tutorials and having one piece of it that you try and make yourself, whether that's you're unhappy with how the gloves look, or you're unhappy with some, detail on the purchase cosplay that you think you can do better. You want it to look a different way, whether that's, oh my God, how do I style my wig to look that fun, like spiky anime, like look up wig styling, like spending a little bit of time to add on to your cosplay to add those details to make it better will make you happier in the long run, and it will start developing those skills to then be like, okay, well, maybe next time I will, make my cosplay instead of purchasing it. And, again, there's nothing wrong with purchasing cosplays. I have cosplays I've purchased. I've purchased cosplays both online and from like other cosplayers who are selling their old ones. I think that like that's a very important part of kind of the cosplay ecosystem, and, having everything kind of go around. And when people get tired of wearing stuff or whatever, like I think that is very much part of the community. But again, I want to encourage people that you do not have to look perfect and put together and exactly like the character. And it's way more fun to experiment and to try and make some stuff and to try and add your own special touches and your own unique elements to stuff. And you'll have a lot of fun doing that, and you'll learn things along the way, and you'll build those skills, which is such a cool part of cosplay.
That's such a great idea. And that adds like ownership to it too. Like now this is my cosplay because I added something to it that makes it stand out.
Yes. Yeah. And there's so many resources now. Like that's the other crazy thing now is that so much of the materials and the tutorials and the information is so much more accessible than it used to be. Like there's entire YouTube channels dedicated to people who are cosplayers showing you how they built stuff, how they made stuff. If you're like, okay, I want to do this character, Googling like, how do I make Link's sword will give you like 50 videos, right? Yeah. And if you're like, oh, I want to make, a sword of this obscure character from this obscure anime from 10 years ago, and there's not a video tutorial for that, looking up how to make Link's sword will teach you a lot of things that you can probably apply to some obscure character that does not have a full breakdown crafting tutorial video because they're not as popular. And so that's another great hack too, is like, okay, how do I make a cosplay sword? How do I style a ponytail wig? Like you can look up tutorials for specific pieces of your cosplay And that will teach you so much about the character you're trying to do, even if they're not a really popular character.
That's kind of making me feel like if I had to theorize on how to make a sword, which I still don't know how to do, I would just try to shape it out of paper first. Like my first thought is just origami, and then like, all right, how do I solidify?
Your first thought is origami for everything. I'm waiting for your full 100% origami cosplay. When is that coming?
Cool. I feel like I might do that for Chip Scholar.
Yeah, you need a full origami cosplay. Or like a giant like ball gown that's like covered in origami. That'd be cool.
Yes, Ariel.
Yes, Ariel
origami is so hard too.
Ariel.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Cosplayers will do the most like detailed, time-consuming stuff for their love of the craft and their love of the character. Like I made a giant serpent, right? I had to make like 150 scales out of fabric. They were like fabric triangles, and I had to sew them together, and I had to sew lace under them, and I had to sew beads under them by hand, and then I had to sew them onto my snake tail, and I did that 150 times. Like cosplayers just be doing the most all the time.
It's appreciate the details.
Yes, it's part of the process for sure. And we do it because we love it, and we like are excited about the character, we're excited about the thing, and we just want to show our love and appreciation for it, for sure.
It sounds like community is a very big part of cosplay. Do you guys feel like it's a pretty welcoming community?
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like they're like always like everyone is always so like welcoming, happy, like wanting to learn. It's only more the few bad apples that make it like not as
like
great, but I feel like to me like a lot of the good outweighs a lot of the bad, and 100%. I feel like especially with the whole consent stuff and all the other things in recent years, I feel like millennials we walked so Gen Z could run, and now there's a lot more like firmer boundaries being set in the workplace and in cosplay. And I feel like just the whole talk around like, hey, like being able to communicate with each other and set boundaries, and like it kind of even teaches people how to talk to narcissistic people as well, because like I had some friends ask me like, oh my god, like since they feel like, oh, like Ash, like you know how to set boundaries, like how do I do this, like how can I talk to this person? And I would kind of like hear how they're talking to those people, like, oh, okay, I see where you're going, where it's going wrong, and I'm more or less just recapping what I learned in therapy. So I feel like a lot of it really just boils down to that. And I feel like because of a lot of people in therapy now, a lot of us recognizing we're neurodivergent, ADHD, autistic, etc., I feel like a lot of us now have the right kind of behavioral language to really resonate with each other. Because I feel like in the past, a lot of it was like, oh, I don't understand how you did this or that, and attaching their actions to their character immediately, and then just demonizing people so much, when nowadays I feel it's like, oh, I think they made bad decisions, but I don't think that they're a bad character, so long as if that person is willing to learn and hold themselves accountable, then I think this can be, a fixable social situation. So I feel like thanks to a lot of that growth, that has improved the cosplay community by like 1,000%. So I feel like that's just been my experience so far.
So well said.
I will say, I think I agree with Ash on the like. I think the good outweighs the bad, and that it's definitely better than it is bad. But I also don't want anyone to kind of like assume that everything is going to be perfectly fine and there will be no issues and no incidents, because that like is not true. Because I do think that like the thing you have to keep in mind is it's so big. Like when we talk about the cosplay community, like we are not talking about a monolith. We are talking about this like huge, insane, giant group of people that are going to be connected to it in a lot of different ways and have a lot of different background and experience and etiquette and all of those kind of things. And, like if you think about it, like the only thing we have in common is that we wear costumes. We could be into completely different fandoms or have completely different like beliefs and stuff. And so it really is so big and so diverse, which is what is fantastic about it. But that also results in kind of clashing or incidences or things like that. And so the other thing too is that it's a space where you have both minors and adults all kind of existing together. And there's not a lot of minor supervision. Like I was going to cons as a teenager, completely unsupervised. I definitely made some questionable choices as a teenager that I should not have been doing, but I was a teenager. Like I didn't know better. Yeah. And so I think that like, but at the same time, all the adults in the cosplay community, like that's not my mom. Like it's not their job to parent me. Right. And so I think the minor adult dynamic is something you have to be careful of. I think like the sexiness of cosplay, like cosplay does not have to be, but can be a very sexy thing. And a lot of people will do really sexy cosplays, or they'll bring in sort of like BDSM or adult elements into their cosplays, or just like are present in the fandom. And so like that's something you have to be careful of like, you know, is this male photographer who wants to take a picture of you doing it because he's a nice guy, or is he doing it because he wants to get creep shots of you, right? And so I think that's something to be aware of, especially if you are feminine presenting and wear sexy cosplays. Yeah. Like I had an incident where I was wearing like a collar for the cosplay I was wearing, and this stranger that I'd never talked to before comes up to me and he clips a leash onto my collar without asking me.
Oh, wow.
Like insane. Like, and this was like at a hentai panel where like literally 30 minutes prior to this happening, they had a whole big spiel at the beginning of like consent and cosplay is not consent and you have to ask for consent and blah, 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 blah. And he very much did not do that. And so like, that's what I want to say is that like, you know, you do have to be vigilant. You do have to be aware. And I also think too, that like, I think cosplay as a hobby is way more fun when you find your own niche and find your own people and make friends, like make actual friends of people that you spend time with together and get to know and go through, you know, the standard friendship progression of getting to know someone and becoming closer with them. And I've made fantastic and amazing friendships with tons of people in the cosplay community. And I have a lot of really lifelong friends through cosplay. But at the same time, not everyone that you meet and go up to is going to immediately want to be your best friend right away. And so you can have a lot of really fantastic interactions and meet a lot of really fantastic people, but you do still have to, you know, have boundaries and be reasonable and not just assume that some cosplayer that you talk to is going to be your friend because they like the same character as you. Yeah. So those are kind of my, I guess, like PSAs to new people in the cosplay community is like beware of creeps and bad apples, and go through the process of making friends, because there's a lot of really friendly and fantastic people in there, and you just have to go out there and find them and like talk to them.
And there's safety in numbers too, to have that core like 5 friends that are going to the same con as you. There's safety.
Yes.
Now, as a podcaster who is often at these conventions too, like we are invited to share the event. So our job is to take pictures of things. One of the things that we like to do is we'll ask permission, first of all, of course, to take pictures of cosplayers. And what we've been doing over the last like 6 months or so, as we try to even be better about it, is get their social media tag if they're willing to share it, and tag them in the photo itself, as in like, we're not using them, but also like sharing. Is there some best practices that somebody who is attending a convention that wants to share the cool cosplay, some best practices they should be doing?
Yes, 100%. So what I would say is, you mentioned it right away, ask for permission before you take their picture. Do not walk around taking pictures of people. You will never know what is going on with someone, whether they will or won't take a picture. Like, I'm going to say yes 95% of the time. I put all of this effort in my outfit. I want you to take my picture. Right. But I want you to ask me so that I can give you a cute pose and I can look really nice and you can get a great photo, right? That's tip number one. Go up to them, ask them if they are sitting down and eating, if they've taken off parts of their cosplay, if they like are walking really fast. I would say maybe that is not a great time, and kind of like circle back, hope you run into them later. Because you know, there's the times I have to say no are usually like I took half of it off because I'm eating my sandwich, or I like am rushing to get somewhere I don't have time. Like those are kind of the reasons where someone will say no. And so, you know, if you can be aware of that and recognize, is this a good time to ask them? That's also good. I had a crazy interaction where this guy like runs up to me and my friend. We were like talking to someone, is like, hey, I want to take your picture, hands his phone to this other person who was standing there and is like, oh, let's do it. Let's pose, blah, blah. And then he made us like wait to like look at his phone. It was just so like, technically he asked us, but it was like so abrupt, so rude, like so sudden that like, don't be that guy, like ask wait for a response, don't assume things, all of that kind of stuff. And another one that I've seen recently is if you see someone taking a picture of someone else, don't photobomb them. Don't jump in their photo. Let them have their moment.
Good.
If you also want a photo, ask them if you can also take a photo, right? Like, don't assume that just because they're taking a photo of one person, you can take a photo too. I feel like this is all very standard etiquette, and you would be surprised at how many people do not follow these basic rules and cannot like behave mindfully. Like, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. No, even I asked permission, but I didn't think about that last one where sometimes when you see somebody posing for a camera, like, oh, they're in, I'm taking a picture mode. So this is a good chance to go ahead and take a picture. But I didn't think about it. Like, you should still also ask permission because that's
and you don't have to be super, like, I've had people who are like, hold up their camera and are like, hey, and then I'll give them like a nod or something. It does not have to be super crazy formal, but that little like, hey, is this okay? I love those people. Those are my like friend, like those are my homies. Please do more of that. Like, that is so helpful.
Yeah, it's how you'd interact with somebody on the street. You wouldn't just run up and like, I'm taking your picture now.
I wear J fashion all the time. You would be surprised how many people run up and take pictures of me on the street without asking. I'm just living my life. It is crazy how many people do that. Oh, it's insane to me.
So rude.
Yeah.
Like, I know for me, like one time I was posing in my Misty cosplay with a friend already doing photo shoots with me. And then this other, like, you could tell this person was not part of the convention. It was one of the normal people passing by. And they just took pictures of me while I was doing the photo shoot. And I was like letting them know, like, oh, can you like not do that? Hey, like, I could give you a better pose if you actually ask me and let me just give me a moment. So they said, oh, okay, yeah, like, no worries. So I like finished that one pose with the photo shoot, and then I actually faced them and then posed for them, and then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's definitely like way better. Like, and I kind of just like let them know, like, hey, like, I know like this is probably not something you come across all that much, but generally, if someone's dressing up, it's okay to ask, hey, can I take a picture of you? That way you get the best picture and not a weird creeper like, oh, like, why are you taking a picture of them? Why are you showing me this? Like, they're not even looking at you. Did you even get that?
There was a group doing a photo shoot at Fanime or at Second Anime, and I was just like, hey, can I get a picture of you guys? Like, while they were doing the first shoot, and they were like, oh, can you like wait for us to take this picture and then we'll face you and blah blah. And I was like, yes, of course. So like, I agree. That's like definitely the way to go, because sometimes they want to show their self, and then they gave me a beautiful photo. So like, it's definitely better all around to always ask and always like listen to whatever they tell you, right? And I love the comment you made about socials too, because like so many people don't get, and it's hard. Like I'm not super great about getting social, so I don't post that many online. I just kind of take them for my own reference a lot of the time. But yeah, if the people who are like, oh, can I get your social and like write it down? Those people are great.
I'm the worst in our crew about it. I got to remember to do it. Thomas, one of our co-hosts, he's really good about like right away on top of it. And I'm like, ah, man, I forgot. And so a lot of times I'm like, did you talk to, Captain Hook? I need to get that social so I can tag them properly and stuff like that. So I think as all our listeners are learning, there's a lot more to cosplay than just dressing up cool. There's a lot of effort and a lot of prep to it. And there's a lot of things to learn about how to approach cosplay as well. Is there any big conventions you guys got coming up that you want to make sure people come and see you guys at?
Well, the two of us will be at Elee together. That's Anime Los Angeles. That's in January. I already mentioned that my next con, I think this was before we started recording. My next con is going to be KomoriCon, which is in Portland. So if you are not in Sacramento and you want to come to that one, I'll be there. And then I think after that, the other big one kind of in the area is Fanime. I usually go to that one every year. I don't know. I think those are the big ones.
Ash, what about you?
Yeah. Definitely. Actually, I got a free badge to YumiCon, so
nice.
I am still tentative, but I would like to say I am going, and in the off chance that something happens that I cannot, that thing that might happen, I'm not sure yet. But for now, I'm just going to say I am going, and then after
you're planning on it.
Yeah, I'm planning on it. Yeah, and then
that one's coming up, right? That one's in October.
Yeah, and then Anime Los Angeles with Elee. And depending on my situation, I may or may not aim for Fanime. Yeah.
I need to go to LA because I've never been to that one. I've been to like Los Angeles Comic Con and different things like that down there, but not that one. And it sounds like it's a pretty big event.
It's so fun. I went for the first time last year and I had a blast. It quickly became one of my favorite cons. The big thing to know about Anime Los Angeles is they do ribbon trading there. So people will make these like, they're kind of like a post-it note. They're like
Awesome.
bad ribbons and they will design like custom ones and get them like printed and stuff. And I saw a guy who had so many badge ribbons on his badge that when he held it off of the second floor balcony, it touched the ground on the first floor.
Yes, we saw that.
The ribbon game there is crazy and it's so fun.
That alone got me sold. That is such a cool practice to do.
And it's so nice. It's in Long Beach. It's in January, but it's LA, so the weather is like very mild, very nice, even in January. It's actually a 4-day convention, so it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's pretty long, which is cool. But yeah, super fun, great area. I had a ton of fun in it. And fingers crossed, hopefully you'll see me in the masquerade. I'm definitely going to be applying, and so we'll wait to see what the it's juried this year, so we have to see what the judges say on if I get in or not.
Well, we'll be able to keep up to date because everybody's going to follow you guys on social media. The links will be in the description. I know Ash, you're really good. Ash always posts like amazing cosplay, and I'm like, how did he do that? That's insane. I'm assuming you do the same thing, Elee?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And I actually taught Ash a lot of stuff he knows because I've been crafting my own for a really long time. But yeah, definitely follow me on Instagram. I do a lot of reels. I do a lot of posts. My partner, Stingray Photos, does almost all of my photos, and they're fantastic as well. So if you're looking for a cosplay photographer, definitely check them out. So yeah.
All right. Head to the description, everybody. Start clicking around and following everything up. Thank you, both of you, so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you too. Likewise.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks so much.